Good news, I've finished laying the track on the TT120 layout already. Yes, hello there, welcome back to Simon's Shed, and a rather chilly Simon's Shed at that. You'll have to excuse, I do have the branded Simon's Shed t-shirt on today, but yeah, it's just too cold, so I've covered it up with a nice warm coat. We'll get back inside as soon as we can, and we will have a look at the finished track and give it a test. And also I need to explain what happened with the track plan, because it's rather minimal. So we'll have a look at that and we'll see what jobs are next after that. And yeah, I think one of those jobs is going to be the dreaded ballasting. Let's take a look. Since the last time you saw the layout then, some progress has been made. As you can see, whereas before we just had the single loop, we've now laid the track for the sidings part of the layout, just done in the same way as I showed you last time. So all the drop up wires have been connected up underneath. The glue is now dry and I'm just giving it a good test at the moment. So the next thing I did was give the track a good test. The loop's been pretty thoroughly tested, so I've been testing these sidings and all seems good. Remember, we had a bit of an issue with this point, but now that it's all connected up to the power, it seems absolutely fine, as do all of the others. And I've very much enjoyed playing trains for a little while. I think it's actually really important to do that. As I said last time, if you do have any problems with the track, you want to find them now before you ballast it and start putting the scenery down. As you can see, there's not much room in the sidings. Could really do with Hornby getting the Class 08 and the wagons out so that we can do some shunting. But with the big Pacific and Mark 1 coaches, there's not really much room to do any shunting. But it all works, and as you probably have noticed, it's slightly different in terms of the track plan to the original video. So let's talk about that. So let's get rid of those so you can see the whole thing. So before, we kind of had something like that, and a lot of you suggested this curve here was actually tighter. It was a radius 1 curve, and the idea was I'd test locos on that. I came to the conclusion that it was a bit of a silly idea to put a curve in that was going to be too tight for most locos just to test them on it. If I do want to test locos on radius 1 curves, I can just buy some set track and do that separately. So I decided to take the radius 1 curve out, which kind of leaves us with this. And yes, a lot of you suggested doing something like this. I've decided not to do that. I've decided to keep it really, really simple. Now, if this was my first layout or my only layout, then I probably would do that. And in fact, I'd probably have a double track going along here for the whole layout. That would give you more sort of playability, if you like, more operating interest. But for this one, I'm deliberately going for a really, really minimal look to try and make the scenery stand out, give the scenery more prominence. So yes, if your layout, absolutely do it as a double track and link up the sidings and so on. But for this particular layout, I'm going for a very specific idea of a very minimal layout. And it's actually really, really difficult to take track out of a layout. It takes a lot of willpower because you just keep adding bits back in. So this is what we ended up with for the track plan. I've obviously put a bit more detail on it and tried to start sorting out what some of the buildings could be. This is still going to be an industrial sort of yard. This is actually a bus station, but it can be repurposed as any kind of warehouse or, you know, storage building or industrial building. So we've still got our road coming down. We've got our shunting part of the layout here, and we've just got a single track. Possibly a bit of a canal here disappearing into a tunnel, but that's for later. These might be sheep, these white dots. And yeah, just added a bit more detail in terms of the station. And I think these red boxes are just to give me an idea of the size of a car in 1:120 scale. So just to sort of sense check it and make sure the road's wide enough and so on. It's just supposed to be a little narrow lane. Little house here. The yellow buildings, I'm not sure what they actually are yet in terms of what kit or what building to buy. The darker green is a hill, and the grey is a steeper hill or a slightly mountainous hill. So yeah, that's where we ended up. I do really appreciate all the comments, and you are absolutely right. Normally I would sort of do a double track or link up this siding to the main track somehow, so you could get in from this end. But as I say, I'm really going for a minimal layout where if I'm sitting over here, I can have all of the points within arm's reach. I don't even have to put point motors in. And yeah, we'll see what the scenery looks like when we get onto that. Right, I think the next job is using the SL1208 joiner sleepers. You can obviously see we've got these gaps in the track here, which is kind of inevitable if you join two bits of track together and leave enough space for the rail joiners. You're going to create a gap that needs to be filled. In the past, I've tried to sort of pull sleepers off of offcuts of track and sort of file them down and get those in. It's not worth the effort, in my opinion, so I just bought they're very cheap. I just bought the extra sleeper pack, and they come on a sprue like this, and yeah, you just break them off and slide them underneath and glue them in place. So the best thing to do is slide it under in a different place to where you want it to end up, so that if you do squash the foam, which you're pretty much almost certainly going to have to, when you slide it to where you actually want it, the foam is still intact and it sort of pushes the sleeper up. Line it up. It does seem to be sitting a bit lower than the other sleepers, which when you ballast it is a problem, because you'll have one sleeper that sort of disappears under the ballast. So I'm going to try and pack it with just a bit of paper. That's better. That's more like it. And we'll glue the whole thing down and neaten that up. And obviously when it's ballasted, you won't see that at all. There we are. It just needs to be just enough glue to hold it in place until it's ballasted. So I'll go around all of the other gaps and fill in the rest of them. So now that all the gaps are filled, we're going to, can't really put it off any longer, the dreaded ballasting. So I'm sure there are a million videos on YouTube on how to ballast model railway track. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to mix the PVA with water 50-50 and add a drop of washing up liquid. to break the surface tension, I'm going to use the same ballast that I use for N gauge, which seems to be, I'll show you the test piece in a minute, but the Woodland Scenics fine grey ballast. Ignore the scissors for now. I've got a Calpol syringe, which we're going to suck the water and glue mixture up and spread it over the top of the ballast. And we've managed to find one of the little Woodland Scenics sort of sponge paint applicators, which I'm using, or which I have used to do a little test piece of ballast. So I think that looks okay in terms of the size of the stones and so on. I'm pretty happy with that. I think what I will do actually is I've got a spray bottle. I'll put some water and washing up liquid in that, and I'm going to try spraying it first to sort of wet it through, because sometimes if you go straight in with the glue mixture, it can, well, it definitely does move the ballast around and messes up your lovely tidy ballasting work. So yeah, for that bit, literally all I've done is put a bit too much on an area, and then these Woodland Scenics sponges fit perfectly between the TT rails. Spread it out and obviously top up as necessary, and then just play with the sort of shoulders until you're happy with it. And just take a while, a bit of patience, which tends to run out halfway through ballasting for me, but I'm going to leave the points for now. I think I'll do those separately. You have to be very careful that you don't glue those up. So yeah, let's get some ballasting started. Oh, and the scissors, by the way, are just for, I'm going to use this bit of cardboard to mock up the sort of hill section here, because I've left these tracks intentionally a bit loose in case I need to trim them down and the hill comes out a bit further. But we'll mock that up with the cardboard in terms of the tunnel portals. Make sure we take into account the height of a carriage, and yeah, get these trimmed off to the right length. Right, let's get going. Worth just putting a bit of blue tack or card or anything down these holes for the dropper wires, just so the ballast doesn't disappear. Let's do some ballasting. So I'll just show you this section. Pretty happy with that. It's just a case of spreading it out and playing with it until you're happy. For this bit, I'm going to try just spraying a fine mist of water on first. So I don't know if I can get this on camera, but it's this is actually a sort of hairdressing bottle, which I got off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description, but it does produce a very fine mist. So I'll try and spray it up and get it to sort of drop onto the ballast. thoroughly soaked now. So, does it make it any easier or any better? Yes, it does. So just a case now of letting that dry and tidying up any bits that have sort of floated up onto the sleepers and so on. And then obviously give the rails a bit of a clean as well to get the glue off, but that's usually fairly simple. I have to say, definitely recommend this. I'll show you one of the areas where I didn't do that and just drop the glue straight on. So you can see you get a lot more ballast sort of floating up onto the sleepers, and you have to go along and scrape it all off. And the next day, that's how this section turned out. Definitely say using the spray bottle helped. It looks a lot neater than some of the other bits where I didn't use it. So let's clean it up a bit. There we are, reasonably happy with that. This gap does jump out a little bit, but you wouldn't fit another sleeper in there, otherwise it would look too close. So might need a bit of weathering there or something to hide it, perhaps. I did use a track rubber just to get the glue off the rails. I don't like using these because they send bits everywhere, but I think in this case it is good to get the glue off the rails, and works well. And relieved to see that it is all nicely stuck down and didn't disappear up the hoover. So the glue worked. So yeah, I'll carry on with the rest of the ballasting. And so we end up back where we started, really, just with a ballasted track and all of the sleeper gaps filled in. Glad that job's done. We can now give it another test. So I have gone round again with the track rubber and hoovered everything off, and tried to tidy it up as much as I can. You can see that the points, the bits where the point blades go, do not have any ballast yet. I'll do that very carefully when I've got more time. I'll just put a very thin layer down and a tiny bit of glue, and just every sort of 5 or 10 minutes keep switching the points to make sure nothing's stuck. Obviously I need to go over a few little holes again, but that's fine. Yeah, don't get disheartened if it doesn't look perfect after the first pass. You can sort of chip ballast off the sleepers and fill in holes. You just have to keep going with it till it looks how you want it to look. You can also weather it, which I think I will do at some point. Not sure how to do that yet. I do have an airbrush. I'm guessing most people don't, so I might try and find an alternative way to do that, or maybe do a bit with the airbrush and a bit with a different way. But yeah, I'm really glad the ballasting is done, and now we can get on with some sort of landscaping, getting the shape of the hills in place, ready for the scenery to go on top. So thanks very much for watching. Please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to follow along with more updates.